Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Radnor Township School District August 14th, 2018 Curriculum Committee meeting. The first item on our agenda, introductions and administrative remarks. Dr. McQuiggan.
Hello. Welcome back, everyone. Not too many administrative remarks tonight. Just to let you know, we finished up with our camp programs last week. We again had our summer reading program. We again brought in our English language learners this summer for the summer English language learner program. And then, of course, we also had our ESY students here, and we had our STEM camp over at the middle school. So we'll be reporting on some of those details in September. But the campers are back enjoying the rest of their vacation, and we'll see them again in a few weeks. We have a public service announcement that Mr. Kearney is going to read to us tonight from Mr. Petiti.
All right. From Michael Petiti, I'm happy to report that we have fully transitioned to the district's new YouTube channel to live stream our committee meetings starting tonight. We will no longer be live streaming through our previous provider, MediaCast. Moving from MediaCast to YouTube was an endeavor supported by our school board, members of the public, and administration. Much of the discussion and planning came through our Government Relations and Communications Committee, with our communications and technology offices working together to make the transition a reality over the last several months. Notably, through our research, we discovered a way to use the same cameras and audio system we've traditionally used by installing an upgraded computer and the necessary software to allow for a high-quality stream to YouTube. YouTube is a more user-friendly solution that should be of greater benefit to the Radnor community, making it easier to tune in and stay informed about school board business.
So, Smile, you're on YouTube tonight. We're going to jump into answers to some of our... Oh, do you have a question, Lydia?
Yeah, I just wanted you to substantiate for people in the community the summer programs that we have. The academic programs are partially funded by Title I, correct?
Title III.
Okay.
Funds our EL program, and are using, you know what, we stopped funding the reading program with Title I when we expanded it to include all schools.
Okay.
So we do fund that ourselves, and then the ESY
Okay.
program is funded through the Special Education Department.
And then the other camps are self-sustaining, correct?
Yes, so the students that come in for the math programming at the high school, that's a self-sustaining program, and so is the STEM camp as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry
All
to
right,
interrupt.
so we have some questions we had back from our June curriculum committee meetings. I just want to go through a few answers for you. One of the questions was actually about the retention policy for videos that we record of school board meetings and committee meetings. There is some work being done now in a retention policy, so we don't have a specific answer on that, but we do know that right now on the website, I believe we have available about 4 years worth of meetings that you can refer back to if you'd like to look at some historical data. We had a question about why haven't we decided to eliminate football tackling, and we have talked about this through some of our other presentations that we've done. But right now, the Radnor football players are participating in the Central League, and as such, they are participating in a tackle league. As we mentioned when we had our coaches here and our trainers, they talked about the fact that we do very limited tackling at the high school, but at the middle school, it's more critical because that's actually where the students learn how to tackle. They practice and learn the particular skills. So there is still some tackling there as they go through that teaching process. We had a question about when will recommendations take place for the middle school study, and I'm happy to share with you that we have been meeting with a wonderful team from the middle school throughout the summer. We have our 4th meeting later this week, I believe. I said to Ms. McMenamin, I've seen her almost every day this week. So we'll be getting together again later this week, and their action plans are really taking shape. So we will be sharing those in September at the Board Curriculum Committee meeting, but many of those action items have begun to take shape and move into actual action. There was a question about Mandarin. I did get an update from Mrs. Kepkis at the high school. We had 4 students express interest in Mandarin, so that is not going to be running this year. We're deferring to other courses that had more of a following. The Active Learning Center grant. So we had the two teachers from the high school, Jessica Vergoldi Scott and also Matt Torsani. They worked all throughout last year to secure $30,000 in funding from REF to get some flexible furniture in their classrooms. So we've looked at that through the donation process. We are not anticipating any additional district expenses other than routine maintenance, you know, moving out the old furniture, moving in the new furniture, which according to Mr. Bechtold, that and spackling some holes in the classroom is typical of what we might do in any classroom. And the last question was, it was a great question about ebooks. So when we adopt textbooks, which one of them are available through electronic form or as some type of an ebook? And I know we've talked about this back and forth depending on the periodical we're looking at, but actually today Dr. Murray did add a line for us on the textbook adoption chart. So going forward, we'll call that out as a specific item. Is an electronic copy available? Does it come at an extra cost? And are we purchasing that item so we can memorialize that information? Typically what happens right now with most publishers is we get a bundle. So if you buy the book, you get the electronic, or sometimes you buy the electronic, you get the book, but pretty much it's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. And the last thing I wanted to mention is I did speak with Ms. Solomon earlier today. We do need to add one additional agenda item today. We're going to be adding a textbook adoption that Mrs. Kevkis is going to speak about, and we'll provide you with copies of the textbook adoption form. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I believe that brings us to public comment. Is there any public comment at this time?
Good afternoon, Judy Sherry, Governor Circle, Newtown Square. The homepage of the district's website stated that August 13th was the first day of fall sports. On the Football Booster Club's website, it states that Monday, August 6th was the first day of fall practice for all but incoming freshmen. Will the board and administration please explain this apparent discrepancy? Is the starting date on August 6th just true for football, or what other sports start on August 6th? That week was extremely hot, and football players play on artificial turf, which significantly intensifies the heat. Also, on the Football's Booster Club's website, it states 2018 RGBC booster dues are $150 required. And yet on page 3 of the proposed Booster Club administrative regulation, it states, at no time shall a booster club communicate to parents' guardians that their participation in fundraising activities is required for purposes of the child's participation. And there's some other fees also that were suggested, a total of $300. A fee is a form of fundraising. You know, booster clubs raise money. They either hold events or they charge fees. That's fundraising for the booster club. So I'm wondering if these football fees should be listed as required. This year, according to the Booster Club, there are 70 players and 25 ninth graders. The website lists 9 coaches for varsity and junior varsity, 3 coaches listed as freshman coaches. That's a total of 12 coaches, or 7.9 students per coach. What other sports have a similar ratio? And I'm going to save the one question, which is the requirement to submit revenue, which the Football Booster Club has not done since 14-15. And the reason that's important, though, here is that if you're going to compare extracurricular sports, you need to have a comprehensive look at the financing of the sports. Otherwise, you can't make comparisons with how they're being funded. And the response to why not eliminate tackling altogether, I'll now ask the question, why can't you learn how to tackle when you're in high school? Tackling is still a pretty big article, a pretty big focus by professional teams who pay their players millions of dollars. You know, the middle school is a time when students' brains are growing at a rapid pace. So I'm going to add to why not can't you learn to tackle in high school to the question of why not eliminate heading the ball in soccer in the middle school. The district's website's homepage states, the top priority for each staff member in RTSD is maintaining the safety of our students. If that is indeed the case, then based on current research, staff members should be leading the charge to create greater safety conditions in sports whenever possible. And these conservative changes are possible and doable. Students are too young to understand their long-term best interests. That's your responsibility. Page 5 of the report of FullDay Kindergarten compares numbers of sections. The chart is misleading because although it shows numbers of sections, it doesn't indicate that the sections after 13-14 are twice as long as previous years and therefore double the number of teachers and other staff needed. That's a significant cost, which is trending upward and not stated anywhere in this analysis. As a matter of fact, costs are not really found in this report. If costs are consistent with initial investment, which is what's stated.
I'm sorry, Ms. Sherry, your 4 minutes has concluded,
Okay,
so
well,
please wrap up your remarks. Thank you.
I'll try. I'm going as fast as I possibly can. You haven't met in 2 months. Why not list them? There are a number of taxpayers, teachers, administrators, parents who are new to the district. It's been 5 years. The district has an obligation to be transparent about its finances. Or why not just say academically the results are consistent with what we thought 5 years ago? That would make as much sense. And also the report makes a comparison about third grade proficiency levels. What's the comparison of third grade advanced levels? Why was that information not included? And I guess I'll save my comments about Mandarin and also the article I found about Garnet Valley for the end of the meeting. Hopefully you'll have time for public comment because I don't think there's that many people from the public here.
Thank you very much. Hi, Roberta.
Good evening. It's always dangerous when you have a little too much time. So I was looking at these assessment issues, and so you know my background is first in science. So I had a question about, first of all, the career and readiness, college and career readiness plan, and as a teacher I would like to know who is going to deliver these services and how will they impact instruction, and where the time will come to do all the inventories that need to be done, and who and when will provide all the documentation for all this, you know, and if it's going to be online or real hard copies. So I think we have a challenge there. And in looking at the kindergarten program, I would like to reinforce what Ms. Sherry said about financial data. As you know, there were many questions before it was implemented, and I think taxpayers need to know if they're getting bang for their buck. And so we need to look not only at the cost of the staffing, but also at building modifications, resources, materials, and the impact of limiting space for other purposes in the schools, is particularly when we look at enrollments growing. Also, in terms of the goals and so forth of the kindergarten program, there was a lot of concern among people that I know the time is there, but I don't know how it's being documented, and if kindergarten was actually becoming another first grade. And I think that was a concern of people who were looking at developmentally appropriate instruction for children. And I would like to know particularly about recess time, because, you know, even 2 recesses is really not enough when you're 5 years old. And documenting also the time for social and emotional interactions. We can list those things down, but I think we need a little bit more in terms of the exact time. We did see in terms of like reading and math instruction what the time was, but I think if you're looking at a whole child, you need more than just reading, math, and science instruction. I'm looking at Kelly, and she has a couple kids, so she knows what that's like. And I think academic resources are fine, but I think we need to look at the whole child. I'm looking further at the sections of the kindergarten students, and again, the numbers are there. And as are fewer students qualifying for special education, there's no quantifiable data there. And nothing about ESL and speech and language. I think ESL and kindergarten students is an important thing based on what I've learned at ITHN. The other factor involved is the age of the kids entering school. I know there was a trend for kids to be redshirted, and that makes a difference in their overall readiness and achievement. In looking at proficiency levels at the 3rd grade, we need to note that the percentage increases there, are they significant? Or they are related sometimes to different class makeup. I know as a teacher, sometimes you get classes that are more powerful than others. Sometimes it's something in the water or something in the moon. But you can get dud classes and you can get powerful classes. And I think sometimes those things can show up in data. And does the data include all students, be they ESL, be they special needs students? And do changes relate to other factors? For example, we changed the math program. Maybe that's why the proficiency level is going up, and maybe not because they had full-day kindergarten. I'm sure there are other factors that we need to look at. Again, when we look at test results, are we looking at test readiness since they're spending all day in school and taking more tests? Or are we looking at actual achievement? Are we looking at aptitude related to achievement, because that makes a difference? I've done studies, I'm sure Chuck remembers, when we looked at aptitude and whether we were meeting the needs of the average kid, and also the need to follow the kids for a class longitudinally and not compare different classes across the board to see if, in fact, the full-day kindergarten is impacting. I think the kindergarten teacher feedback is interesting. It's kind of soft. I don't see pros. I don't see cons. I don't see were these teachers people who taught when they were half-day time versus full-time, or are they all new teachers? I'm sorry. Goodbye.
So, Dr. Winters, you're reaching your 4 minutes, but you
Thank
can
you.
finish up your thoughts.
Okay. I think assessment's important, and it needs to be done carefully and well.
All right. That brings us to the approval of the June minutes. Committee members? Any comments? They're at the back. No, they're in, not,
They're here. They are. They're just in the middle of the packet.
they're in the middle, rather.
No, these are finance.
Okay.
No,
Okay. So minutes are fine as written. And that brings us to the action items. Dr. McQuiggan?
To ask Dr. Murray to talk about the donation, and then I will talk about the calendar.
Thank you. I'm excited to share with you that we've been contacted by Project Lead the Way, notifying us that they've received a generous donation of $500 with a request for that to be applied directly to the Radnor High School Project Lead the Way account. The donation will be applied directly to the account, is worked through Project Lead the Way, and that will help offset some of the costs that are associated with Project Lead the Way, such as license. Currently, we are offering 3 of the Project Lead the Way pathways at the high school, which includes engineering, biomedical science, and computer science, and offering 5 Project Lead the Way courses throughout that pathway. So we are requesting that this request be moved forward to the August regular board meeting for approval, please.
Sorry, can I just ask why they stipulated Radnor High School in their donation?
I don't know. Truthfully, I don't know. The request, correspondence came directly from Project Lead the Way,
Okay.
and they had notified us that a donor had come to them. So it didn't work directly through us as a district. It went through
So
Project
they may
Lead
have
the Way.
contacted other high schools as well. I mean, it could be a company that donated to, Delaware County high schools or Pennsylvania high schools, if
Okay.
that type of thing.
So it's not someone that came to visit our program. It
No.
could be somebody who's giving to a number of different schools.
Right.
Could be, and again, most of the correspondence didn't come through us directly. The company did not contact us. They went through Project Lead the Way, and then Project Lead the Way contacted us and let us know
They
that
have
it would
fairly hefty annual licensing fees, so they could very well be going out and recruiting some corporate sponsors to help offset that.
I'll take it.
Great. Okay.
More.
Minus $500.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, so if we could just take a quick look at the calendar. When we approved the calendar back in January, we said we would be revisiting it again. We were waiting for final information on high school graduation because of the choosing the date and space and whatnot. So you have in front of you a revised calendar that we would like to move to the business meeting this month. The first thing you'll notice that is now included is the Radnor High School graduation date of June 12th. 2019, and I know that parents like to have that ahead of time for planning. Last year, we got some feedback from some parents about having the midterm and final exam dates on the academic calendar. They feel that that would be important to help them with their planning, and if they depend on their older children for childcare and things like that. We did put a notation on there, there's a little asterisk next to it, that the midterm dates and the final dates do tend to move if we have emergency days. So just like this year, you know, the window was one place, and then as we missed numerous days, it moved to another date. So those are the tentative dates, and they will be shared. And then the last thing is we did need to remove June 18th, we had down as an in-service day, and that was actually a miscount on my part. So we have removed the in-service day on June 18th. So the teachers will have one in-service day, which will be June 17th. And then we changed snow emergency days to weather emergency days, just to be more accurate with that. And I also wanted to mention that together working with Dr. Kent from the middle school, we are going to be starting a calendar committee this fall. I collected quite a bit of information as we worked through our June 21st end of school last year about kind of the roadblocks involved with having a school year that is that long, and memorialize some of the discussions we've had about other options. Even last year when I presented the calendar, we had just taken a peek at other options, not really considered them, but just talked about the possibility of vetting them with a larger group. So we will be vetting them with a larger group. We will be starting early in September so that we can kick that off. So you can expect to hear more about the calendar in the coming months. So if you're comfortable with those changes, we would like to move that on for approval this month.
Do we know where graduation is going to be held?
It's going to be at PT Villanova, right?
I'm sorry.
Graduation is at Villanova?
We are 99% sure, but we will not have confirmation until we meet in September with graduation coordinator over there.
Right.
So we're booked at both places?
We have both we have both
covered
for both dates, both times.
Either way. And is there any way that it could be at 6 o'clock instead of 4 o'clock? Did we always have it at 4 o'clock?
We always had it at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
We received a lot of, when we met with the parents and the student council the past couple of years to look at the different venues, the feedback that we got was that they liked it earlier.
Oh, okay.
It was a really positive response because they like to go out to dinner a little bit early, and
Oh, okay.
had it at 6, they weren't being out until 8:30.
So people prefer that. I thought it was hard for people to get out of work, but I'm hearing from a different crowd, so you go with what you hear. Okay.
But that's the kind.
We have both booked and everything is good to go. We have both contingencies planned for us.
And that is the kind of feedback we'll be looking for as we look at the calendar. So let me just go over the changes one more time. So new on this version of the calendar will be the graduation date of June 12th, the inclusion of the midterm and final exam dates for the high school, and the removal of the June 18th teacher in service day. And then just a technical, we replaced snow day with weather emergency makeup days. Okay?
Great. All right, thank you.
All right. So if everyone's okay with the calendar, we'll move on to the textbook adoption, and we'll ask Mrs. Kevkis to come up and join us. I'm going to give you the form. I have one.
Can I start? Okay. Good evening. Back. As you know, this is the first year that we are running in Science and the Environment in 9th grade. So this was a conscious decision to make a change within the curriculum. We looked at our students coming up from the middle school and our students that are in the high school now and saw, you know, a portion of them struggling on the Keystone exams in biology. Biology, as you know, is a unique science. It is not math-based. It's based largely in vocabulary and reading skills. And so we felt that it would be best to look at postponing that class until the sophomore year to give our students in 9th grade an additional year of growth. A lot of the students at the college prep level are in intensive reading or other reading programs at the high school, and that gives them time to come up 1 or 2 grade levels over the course of freshman year. So putting environmental science back in 9th grade, was a way to introduce them to science, to have them grow a love for science, to look at an inquiry-based course where they could really investigate different things, that they could look at portions of biology to get a little bit of background and to give them a jump start on that, but also at the same time to really work on those science skills that a lot of them struggle with, things like data analysis, graphing, different concepts along those lines. So we're excited for that this year. The book that Dr. McQuiggan just took. No, that's okay. We looked at with Mr. Hasty and Ms. Andrulovich, both of which who will be teaching the course this year. That is the hard copy, and we will have online access for all of the students.
Refresh my memory what the progression would be. If you take this, then you go into biology 10th grade?
So if you have science and the environment in 9th grade, you would go into biology in 10th grade, chemistry as a junior, and then as a senior, you could either take an elective science or you could take physics.
Okay. And what were those students doing now? They were taking college prep bio?
So they were taking college prep bio, yes.
That's right.
Yep.
Okay.
So just so I'm understanding, this is the 9th grade science class. If you take science in 9th grade, you'll be taking environmental science, or is there a separate
No, let me
track
clarify.
you
I'm
can
sorry,
follow?
Sarah. So there's
Okay,
a difference depending upon your leveling. So if you're at the college prep level, you'll be taking science and the environment, again, to give that extra year of growth in terms of the reading, et cetera. If you are at the advanced level or at the honors level, you'll be taking biology.
Okay. And then there's different levels of bio. So there's
advanced biology and honors biology.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
all right. So we're anticipating, what, 2 sections of this?
We have 2 full sections.
Okay.
Yep.
So doing quick math. And how long do we think we'll be able to use this textbook?
I think we could use it for at least, it's usually, what, a 6-year cycle that we look at in terms of curriculum. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I forgot to look at the publication date. Oh.
It is an older text, the hard copy. However, the online edition is constantly being updated, and so they're going to be using that as their basis. And again, it's a tool for the classroom. They have to have a text to have something to reference, but Mr. Hasty and Ms. Andrulovich are really good at, doing inquiry-based learning, and so there's going to be so many different activities that they do, that are separated from the text in addition to that.
But is it possible they'll come out with a new one next year if we wait?
We have asked the
6
publisher,
months?
and
They won't, they're not going to
Nope.
do it?
they are not. They have no plans to develop a new text anytime soon. We
Okay.
already asked.
But we have online text.
We have online access for every student.
So just because this came up earlier, is that on this form and I'm missing, or is this an older form?
No, it's not. It's not on that form. We just added it
Okay.
to that exact same form, so the next time you see it, you'll see the answers to those
Perfect,
questions.
okay. But do you know how long the license is? If we're buying textbooks this year, is it just a 1-year license? Is it a 5-year license?
The license for the textbook itself or
Or for
the
the online portion?
It's a 5-year license.
Okay.
Yeah, and the other part was a big piece of this was looking at the Lexile level. So again, going back to the reading skills, they wanted to make sure, especially with biology, it's so hard to find a textbook that is for that level and appropriate for that level. That this was really kind of a home run in that respect.
Okay. I noticed, and this is cheating, but in the front of the book, there was a
Yeah.
pros and cons. The paperwork is still in
So
there.
they did their homework.
Well, I was happy to see that. And one of the things I noted was that it said a lot of the news articles in the book are from 2003 to 2006. Is one of the things available on their online program?
So
Is
if
that more
you-
updated news articles?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So all the literature that goes through the online portion is being updated on a consistent basis.
Okay.
Which is why I don't think they're as concerned with updating the hard copy.
Got it. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, good.
Any other questions? Chuck? Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, now we'll invite Dr. Rabarchik up for full-day kindergarten. Do you want me to click, or you?
Good evening, everybody. So as we go through this, I can refer to some of the questions that were asked during public comment as well. So our kindergarten review are 4 years in the making. Here we are. This is, as we had indicated in the presentation itself, this is the first class to hit 3rd grade, and that's why we did focus on some of the information here on PSSA. As well as other things. So the version that was online, it was decided to make it a little bit more robust and be more detailed in regards to what we are sharing tonight. So just a reflection, the research that we were looking at the time, you know, we obviously learning more and reading and math and those in the half-day programs, higher achievement scores, higher test scores, not that that's what our intentions were, but, you know, that is part of it. Something that really doesn't reflect what happens in Radnor often is less likely to repeat a grade. We really rarely have students repeating kindergarten, but more individual attention, teacher attention, and that experience predicted fatigue, which we still do see in the beginning of the year, as with any student who's going into a new school year, but especially in the kindergarten, maybe adjusting from a partial program to a full-day program. So we had 3 goals that we were trying to obtain when we were set out with implementing full-day kindergarten. The providing more instructional time to reinforce the skills, the social emotional interactions, and increase the time for students to access academic resources. So if you look to the next page, we have the instructional time. You can see we doubled our day. We went from a half day to a full day. So we increased our language arts from the 60 to 120 minutes. Math from 30 to 60, social studies and science, which are either taught in unit or staggered throughout the year from 25 to 50 minutes, our specials that went from 30 minutes to 50 minutes. But in addition to that, we added the health class that kindergarten students did not used to participate in, and the purposeful play. The purposeful play is, again, in addition to recess. This is so it's incorporated into the school day itself, whether it be language arts, science, whatever it may be. It's that time for the students to practice their social and emotional skills with their peers. So the second goal of the more time for social emotional interactions, along with that purposeful play, is they get to eat lunch together, which they're not used to. That first week is a little bit challenging, but we have wonderful 5th grade helpers who always help our students, our kindergarten students, and they're very successful by the time they hit the end of the 2nd week with that process if they're buying lunch. Participating in the 2 recess sessions, there is one at lunchtime. There is another one scheduled for the second half of the day. But again, that purposeful play is not part of the recess time. It's a scheduled time within the day or integrated into the content areas. So that structured purposeful play that's integrated to reinforce the social skills in small and large group settings, whether it be centers or working in a science experiment. Schools or students being able to fully engage within the school community. You know, this is really important to them. At times, they never felt like they were fully part of the school community itself, but rather there for that half day, they were missing out on a lot. And the last thing there are the assembly programs. Because if there was an afternoon assembly program, we'd always invite students back, but sometimes parents wouldn't bring them back. So they're there for that whole time. Now they can be participating. So the last goal in providing more students to access of academic resources, they get more time with the reading specialist, that intervention extension time, the flexibility of scheduling where it was so limited before with our PT, OT, and speech and language. Again, the assembly programs. And one that's on here is that increase of literacy time, because we have the literacy aides that meet with the students each day for each classroom for an hour. So if the students need additional help. So the evaluation of the full-day kindergarten program, obviously we're meeting here today, but we have hit other benchmarks throughout the course since implementing this program. And back to the 2015 year, where we did look at the first year data, and we also looked at a recap of how the students adjusted. Each year we do share at our kindergarten readiness program that we do in the spring at the public library as well with parents to give them a brief view of what it looks like for a full day program. As you can see, our sections, along with our total number of students for each class, you can see here, it does vary. 13-14 was the year prior to the start of full-day kindergarten. But again, if you look at the 17-18 school year that we just concluded, if we were doing this report right now, we would be at the 239, so the same mark where we were when we first started full-day kindergarten. It kind of fluctuates to that. It goes up a little bit, goes back down. And obviously, we're looking at one of our larger classes coming through, which we do often see a bubble come through. And again, this kind of reflects and correlates with our the Pennsylvania Economy League data we had for the demographic study, that we would see some increase. In regards to special education, this is one that is difficult to say that this was the result of why we have less students receiving services or being qualifying for special ed services, but there are things that may impact the trend, and that's that additional time of interventions and differentiated instruction, the increased utilization of those literacy aides, the reading specialists, and just the access to our educational programs to teach the curriculum and put more times towards meeting those standards. So on the next page, you'll see we had the first year, as I mentioned, of our third graders taking the PSSAs. And I do plan to follow them through to see if this is a continued trend or what happened. But it's kind of hard to say if full-day kindergarten was the immediate impact of the scores that continued to go on the increase here. We did have a change in the testing, the test itself, and then this last year with the amount of testing time. So there are a couple other impacts that may play there. But again, we will be looking to see that we're going to follow this cohort as well as the next few that come through. In regard to the comment about test readiness, one of the things that I think we do a very nice job in Radnor with is that we don't teach the test. We truly believe our curriculum and our programs that support our curriculum teach the standards and what students need to know. So I think this is a testament to our teachers doing a very fine job in regards to preparing students just for the skills that they need to be successful. On the next page, you will see the reading achievement. This is through the use of our Fontes and Pinnell benchmark. And on this, we have, you can see from, did it black out? From the 2012-2013 mark to the time we started the full-day kindergarten program, we were trending upward there, but as you can see, it dipped down a little bit, but then continues to climb in that with that trend. You know, again, we switched reading programs 7 years ago. So there's a lot of other impacts that may be having some guidance to what numbers we're seeing on paper. But again, we would hope that the addition to full-time and more time with students would have impacted students to achieve at a higher rate. The one thing that was mentioned about students in the reading, which I thought I'd wrote a note down. I'll come back to that. I think I just blinked on that one. But the last page of the presentation is the kindergarten teacher feedback. You know, and again, this was just some feedback from various teachers from around the district from all three schools, but more time to teach that social studies and science time that they really didn't get a lot of time to do in a half-day program. The center time that they utilize, they really commended the ability to have that center time. And again, that's the integration of the social emotional with that purposeful play into that time when they're still reinforcing skills that they're learning. The utilization of instructional practices, that professional development that was provided at the time we were transitioning to a full-day program with, I'm going to forget Lucy Haney that was here. She did a wonderful job, and she helped the teachers to establish some instructional practice within the classroom to get the students to be engaged throughout the day. And they really have, the kindergarten teachers have really worked to be train each other as they work through and collaborate to continue those strategies. That incorporation, again, of purposeful play, the increased time to ensure kindergartners are completely part of the school community, as we said, and then the more time young children have to interact with another. They just felt that they had a better opportunity to learn, grow, and flourish as they go through. So I'll take any questions you may have.
I have just a detailed, you have the chart of the F&P data.
Yes.
So did we give that to kindergartners before? Yeah. Did we
The
give
Fontes
that-
and Pinnell?
Yeah, yeah. Did we give that to kindergartners before we started full-day kindergarten?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Yes.
I think we only gave it to first graders.
Nope.
Okay. So this is consistent data from end-of-year kindergarten. Okay.
Oh, and that's what somebody asked during the public comment about what students are included. This is all students. We did not
Oh, right.
We did not take anybody out. This is all students within the district.
Okay. All right. You want to go? Go ahead.
I have a bunch of questions.
Sure.
So, and some of them, I think I know the answer, but I just want to clarify them for people watching and maybe for people who have follow-on
Sure.
questions. So, for example, my understanding of why we went to full-day kindergarten, we were already teaching a full-day curriculum just in a half-day program, basically.
Pretty much, yes.
We were trying to, at least.
Yes.
So we're now taking 120 minutes for reading and language arts, something we were trying to cram into
60 minutes, correct.
Okay, so we're giving the teachers and the students more time to work with the data and the information and process and teach and learn.
Right. And one of the mottos that we had, and Maureen will laugh at this too, but that heard the question about the new first grade. That was the one thing we really ingrained in teachers. We did not want this to be the
Right.
new first grade.
This is the
We
kindergarten
wanted this
program.
to be the kindergarten program, but truly deliver it the way it was intended.
Okay, and there was a reference to the new math program. Did we introduce the new math program in the kindergarten level as well? Or, okay, so that's,
Yes, it was implemented K-5.
Okay.
K-8, actually.
okay. And so then the only other, the new piece that was added was health as a the specials rotation, and then also more collaborative play, this interactive social time.
Correct. So the students were already attending art, music, library, and phys ed.
Okay.
So the health piece was added once
Okay.
the full day program.
And I think Mrs. Winters, or Dr. Winters, sorry, asked this question. The purposeful play, do you have a sense of how much time that is?
I do, and it's hard to say because it's integrated a lot of the time. So as I
Might be
was
part of the science curriculum. they do it-
exactly when they're
okay.
doing the hands-on experiments, or, but you know, I know when you would go over to the different elementary schools, they would be taking maybe it looked like a recess,
Mm-hmm.
but they were doing the playing in the kitchen and using their manners and sharing, and so it was that social emotional component.
Okay, so really there are a couple different social emotional components. There's the center's time, there's purposeful play
Right.
built into the curriculum, and then there's the more free-form recess.
Correct.
Okay, because if I felt like I'd seen kids out in the morning at recess, but you're saying it's lunchtime in the afternoon.
I shouldn't
so-
say that. It depends on their schedule, the building
Okay.
schedule, because if they have a special and lunch to the later part of the day, they may take that second recess in the morning.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful.
It all depended upon schedule.
Okay. I had just a concern, and this is kind of sidelined to the building space, but I see that Wayne Elementary is going to have 6 sections. Do they have space in their building for that? Is that,
They do.
okay. Is something else being displaced? Is somebody being put into a room that was formerly not a classroom?
No, actually, it was a room that was being utilized by a smaller class, so
Okay.
they do have that room to
Okay.
put the 6th section in.
Okay. This was kind of brought up, again, by Dr. Winters, but it was a question I had in the presentation that came home in the packets. You said that costs have remained consistent, and I guess my question there, obviously, we have additional teacher costs, because a teacher that used to teach 2
Correct.
classes it can only teach 1 set of students now, which is probably better for everybody involved. But the question I have then is, when you say costs remain consistent, you mean once we implemented it? It's not, I mean, the full-day kindergarten is honestly genuinely more expensive than the half-day kindergarten.
Yes, from that, so when we had that
Apples to apples, just
initial
those 2, right?
investment, we had that, and then, yes, the cost of the teacher continued.
Okay.
But in regards to, if you look at the number of sections and number of students comparably,
Okay.
those costs of program materials didn't change because we still had, even if it was half-day, you were
Okay.
just splitting the day into 2 parts.
Okay.
You still needed the same number of writing journals, same number of math books,
Mm-hmm.
journals, so.
And I don't think you were asked to do this, but did you have a sense in looking at this data, were there savings in other ways? I mean, if we have fewer students on IEPs or fewer students needing other specialists down the road, are there other ways that the district is seeing a savings financially? Aside from the fact that it's just good educational practice to have kids performing
Yeah,
at a level.
I don't know if I can honestly say whether one way or another, if there's that type of savings or not. But I would imagine, you can look into it further.
No, I wasn't necessarily, I just wondered if it was obvious to you that we're,
But that's a good question.
okay.
For sure.
These were notes you, okay. I think, so that, then this kind of goes to the Wayne Elementary question, but there haven't, since we implemented full-day kindergarten and did whatever modifications need to be done then, there haven't needed to be any other modifications to buildings
No,
for the full-day kindergarten?
not at this point, no.
Okay. Okay. Thanks so much, Anthony. I appreciate your preparedness on this.
Hate to bring this up, but the financial piece will be nice to know when you're doing some kind of a study about what we're providing. It would be nice to know for the taxpayers to know how much this is actually costing. So that's something that I think we do have to put in. When we do come up with, these are the things that we've improved, this is what it cost us to improve. I think that's critical to start with. One of the other things that I'd be interested in is whether we track behavioral incidents due to the fact that we're looking at the emotional stability of our students, and I'm sure we do. And we could compare those to what we had at our half-day program, and see what we're dealing with that. See how if we did put any additional counseling type things in place, what are some of the things that we're doing as we're transitioning these kids directly into a full day? What are we doing that's benefiting them to do that? So this is a great kind of a start, but it's a little on the, hate to say fluffy side, but basically it is. I think it's good that we're looking at it. The literature really does say after about third grade, it's basically catch-up time, and that we're testing in third grade. Now, some of the other ones that we're doing, like you said, the tests that we're doing in kindergarten, that could be of some value. But some of the other stuff that we're looking at, I think we need to have a little more explanation about why we're looking at this and what it's proving to us. And I firmly believe it's more based upon what our teachers are seeing and what our teachers are doing, rather than the assessments that they're doing, rather than just the standardized piece that we're having. A single score is not overly impressive to me. It's a mark, it's a point, it's a data point, but I think we need to look at it a little bit deeper. And I'm willing to wait till next year.
So
But I think
Chuck, what types of scores are you asking for? Because right now they would only have the one third grade set of assessments. They're giving us the reading assessments.
when the teachers, what are the teachers seeing? Are the teachers seeing that?
Well, he has the anecdotal.
Yeah, right, that's
Right.
anecdotal. I'm saying that I would just prefer to know a little bit more about how the classes are going, how are the kids prepared to learn, how's the learning taking place, how much, I guess it would be relearning do we have to do? Has this increased when our kids come back into the first grade? Because you're looking at the long-term piece. So the kids that used to have the half-day kindergarten, when they would come to start first grade, what was happening then compared to what's happening now? Just a little more. I can go into it later. I'm really not prepared.
So you're saying you don't want just kindergarten teacher feedback, you're asking for first grade teachers to see the difference?
We're tracking these kids up to third grade, and then we're giving this test, and then we're saying, well, this is a test that they took. I would just like to see what's happening when they're coming into first grade, which is a more somewhat of an accurate piece from half day to first grade compared to full day to first grade, and just to see what we've accomplished.
Yeah.
How much
Well,
easier is it, the transition? Because we have similar first grade teachers. How is it now for the first grade teachers? Because first grade has to change. That changed. They're no longer teaching the same way they did before, because now hopefully our kids are coming in knowing a lot more. So I know we usually have 12 down. You usually go from the top down. But now we're putting a little twist on that, and I just need a little more looking at that little twist of how we're changing as that comes up. Because now we're having a little bump to push us forward, and how is that changing what we're delivering in first and second and into the third grade? Because they're the three critical grades for.
I know it's only me saying it, Chuck, but I know, I mean, I've had plenty of conversations with a lot of first grade teachers as well.
Yeah.
And I know that they say it's a great benefit that they're coming from a full day program, that they're much more prepared to handle a first grade and everything, but that's something that we can definitely look at further.
It could just be we have them come in.
Right.
And we have them give a little, what they're seeing, the kids coming in, and some of the benefits and that, so that the constituency that's out there says, you know, we're doing a good job.
Sure.
One test score to me doesn't prove it. Okay.
I think the other thing that might be helpful too is if you go back to some of the, the previous reports that were done, like those early reports, we did look at the first grade the first year, and then when we presented that, it was like, well, it's just 1 year, and
right.
Because frankly, we didn't see a lot of growth that first year. It was 1 year, and we had for 2 consecutive years we had a K-1 collaborative group that we were running with the kindergarten teachers, talking to the first grade teachers and saying to them, here's what we taught the kids, here's the learner you can expect to see this fall as opposed to who you saw last fall. And then after the first grade teachers had some time to spend with those new learners, we had a lot of conversations with them, on in-service days and whatnot. And the number one thing that they cited was the increased social skills, that the students really came to first grade ready to learn. Because frankly, when we saw those initial scores and we saw, well, Dibbles is kind of where it always was, and Fontes Pinnell is similar to where it always was. So, we went to the teachers and said, well, why does everybody think this is such a great program? And they're constantly, they were like, it's not about the content. It's about the learner and the confidence that they bring with them to first grade and their ability to get along and their ability to work with project-based learning and all those things that are very difficult to measure. It's very anecdotal.
And that still occurs on a yearly basis. I know at each of the schools when they're doing their transition, they're doing their class lists at the end of the year and talking with, collaborating with each other from grade to grade, knowing that their first grade and kindergarten teachers are talking as well as all the way through. So.
Okay. Yep, all right, thank you.
And I want to ask you, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Dr. Bartek, Tony, in your research too, you I know had discussed and looked at some of the financial pieces, so I don't know if you're able to speak to that or not right now.
Sure. So that initial, let me just grab it here. So that initial budget expenditures that we had set aside at the beginning of this was the facilities, and the facilities was going to happen either way from what I recall, because we were talking about Wayne Elementary needing more room, and I then came along with the classes as well, and then with full day kindergarten only enhanced the reasoning for it further. So the facilities was a $910,000 expenditure. The staffing that we looked at was the teachers and plus the paraprofessionals, and that was about $900,000. And I know I went back to Mr. Stitzel today just talking about this, and I know we didn't end up utilizing the whole $900,000. He didn't have an exact amount, but we estimated for 10, and we used 8.5 of the positions that we were looking for. And then the program materials and professional development was right around $300,000. So just overall about $2.1 million is what we did as the initial investment. But if you take away that $1 million for the facilities, it was right about $1 million.
I wanted to ask you, because I didn't have the actual number of students before, do you have an average class size? I mean, I guess we could calculate here now.
Yeah, I can calculate this for you if you would like. Yeah.
Yeah,
but
I can see it,
I mean,
actually.
just
Okay.
taking that and dividing it. But generally, our classes, especially kindergarten, they do fluctuate up and down at each school. But generally, we do like to stick around that 20
Yeah.
mark.
It looks like even lower, actually, more like
There are times when it
19.
gets lower, yes.
Okay. Which
So
is
the
great.
numbers that I reported out here are the end of June, is what the the last month of school.
Okay.
So even though we've had maybe 4 sections and a dip below, that was because maybe some students left during the year. Or the same thing with if it was over 21. It was only because we started with the right number based on the guidelines, but then it went over.
Right.
So.
So I remember back, I guess it was year one, after year one, and we received, and this was sort of to Mr. Madden's question, we received anecdotally, and I think we were both sitting up here, just across the board, people were loving this program. I mean, to the point that some were saying this is the best program we ever implemented. This is great. It was better than they anticipated. Are we still hearing that? You know, we're 4 years out now. People are used to it. So they loved it to start with. Has it consistently been that popular, or have they identified, like, maybe a few things we could tweak to make it better?
Yeah, I can't say I've heard the opposite of people wanting to go back to a half-day program. I can only say honestly that the people that I've spoken to rave about having a full-day program and a full-day opportunity for their child, and see a difference in them, especially those who have older children who were in a half-day program compared to going to the full day. They definitely see a difference in their children.
So are there things that we could tweak to make it even better that we're hearing from mainly staff, first grade teachers?
I think too, Lydia, when everyone came gushing about how well the first year went, I mean, a lot of that people raved about, I think, was about the implementation too.
Right.
So one of the things that was really nice is, you know, we didn't just get some extra desks and spread the kids across a few extra rooms. You know, we purchased upgraded materials. The teachers got all new editions of everything ahead of everyone else. They had a lot of professional development that they wouldn't normally have had. You know, like Tony said, they worked for 2 years with Dr. Haney on purposeful play and setting up centers. And, you know, it really was a shot in the arm for the entire program. So, you know, I would say that, you know, instead of starting out with kind of a bare bones, you know, hey, we're going to have kids twice as long next year, let's see how it goes, we really did redesign the whole program before we brought those students in. So when I look back on it, you know, I still think the materials are very current, the teachers that we have are well trained in their use, and the students respond to them well. So I think what we're experiencing right now is an opportunity to kind of reap the fruits of our labor that, you know, teachers have really become experts in using things like Wilson Foundations and the Fontes and Pinnell Benchmark Assessment and the reading program. And I think, you know, kind of staying the course and supporting them is a way that we can always help a program to grow.
And I think a mark of excitement about that is if we think about the trip we took out to Abington School District with a van full of kindergarten teachers, I would say probably 85 to 90% of them are still the same teachers who are in the classroom from 4 years ago. There hasn't been a lot of transition in the kindergarten teaching profession, which has been nice.
Well, that speaks volumes,
Yes.
honestly. And I have to say, and I don't want this to be, you know, us all patting ourselves on the back, but I have to credit Dr. McQuiggan with that implementation of full-day kindergarten 4 years ago, because you really did lead that initiative. And you're right, that it was the program, but it was also how you plan to lay it out. So, yeah.
Well, it's a lot about, you know, it was a lot about literacy and reading. And I think when, you know, Dr. Barczyk took the teachers out to the different locations to see different programs, you know, we saw things that we were drooling over, and we also saw things we knew we never wanted to do. You know, like kindergartners filling out workbook after workbook after workbook. So, you know, I think that was a good little reality check, too.
Yeah, and I think it's important, and I'm pleased to hear people asking, we don't want this to become, you know, first grade early.
Right.
This is not what it's supposed to be, and I'm really pleased to hear that the biggest benefit is the social emotional growth, because that's what it's supposed to be about, isn't trying to give them the adequate time to do what they're supposed to do in kindergarten, not to do more academics, but to actually have time to implement the program the way it was designed. So I'm really happy to hear that that has been fulfilled.
I had one more question, because I didn't have these numbers in the packet, and I was doing quick math while you were talking. What is our district policy on capping kindergarten size? What's it supposed to be?
21.
It's a 21.
Okay, so that's
It's K to 3, 21.
HDD is 21. Okay, so that's why we have 5 sections at RES, and 7 students later we have an extra.
Correct.
Okay, just making sure.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Barczyk, for all your efforts to get this together in the middle of the summer. I appreciate it.
So I'm going to take a couple minutes and just sort of set the stage for Dr. Kane to come up and talk to us about 339 plan and college and career readiness. This is something we've had on our agenda for the last few months, and we keep bumping it forward because we've had other things filling our time. But we are going to be seeing the Future Ready Index soon, so I want to make sure that you're comfortable with, you know, what's going to appear, and so we'll be pushing out information a little bit at a time so that when it comes to us in late fall, as I have been told is the unveiling date, that we'll know what we're looking at. So I gave you a short handout, and what I tried to do is just take the bits and pieces from PDE and put them together into kind of a quick reference guide so that when we start to look at these numbers and when Kevin starts to reference the 339 plan, you can kind of see how the pieces of the puzzle put together. So the first handout, that blue sheet, just talks about why Pennsylvania decided to go with this Future Ready Index and what the intentions are. And really the two big intentions that come through in those themes is they were looking for a measure of schools that was more robust than the single number that we've had in the past with the school performance profile score. So there were many districts and many stakeholders across the state who came forward and said, you know, why are we only measuring the success of schools based on AP scores and advanced scores on PSSAs when we have students out there doing great things with NOCTI exams at our technical schools, earning trade certifications and doing dual enrollment. So the one piece was to be more robust, and the other goal was to make sure that all students were being represented. So for instance, in the old school performance profile score, there really wasn't anything specifically that looked at our English language learners, and again, these students that were taking these college and career technical courses and these pathways, they really weren't getting the kind of credit for that hard work that students were that, say, scored and advanced on a PSSA or took an AP class. So on the second page, I just typed up for you some kind of shortcuts. So when we look at the Future Ready Index, we're going to be looking at 6 different indicators. So you'll see that they're listed there. 4 of them coming to us from the new ESSA regulations, and the other 2 additions that Pennsylvania was specifically passionate about as far as including in our state report card. So many of these will look familiar to you. You will not be surprised that one of them is going to be proficiency on the PSSA and the Keystone exams, similar to what we had in the school performance profile, but presented to us in a different way. Academic progress is going to be the growth, just we looked at in the past with our PVAS score, how much are students growing. The graduation rate, the one thing that's been added is there's also going to be a notation of students who graduate in 5 years. So for instance, if a student is in a special education program and maybe doesn't receive their degree with the cohort that they've been traveling with, they stay an extra year and receive it the next year, the district will still receive some acknowledgement that that student will be counted as a non-PAR graduate. So they'll be looking at those. And then the new piece is going to be growth for our English language learners. So since they're measuring growth, you won't be seeing anything this year. This year is a baseline year, so they will be using the access test that we give every spring to all of our English language learners, and they'll be establishing that baseline, and then the following year we'll be able to see how our English learners are growing. We do record growth on our English learners. We do report it to WIDA, which is the organization that provides our assessment materials. And we do track them. So we do know that our growth is strong for our English language learners, so this will be an opportunity for us to get credit for some of that hard work that our students and teachers are doing. The 2 things that you're going to hear more, the one thing you're going to hear more about tonight are going to be the college and career benchmarks, and Kevin will talk to you about the 339 plan, which is a huge undertaking on the part of both Kevin and the guidance counselors and the teachers in our schools. And then chronic absenteeism is also going to be one of the 6 indicators as well, looking at students who have missed more than 10% of the school days. They have a pretty rigid guideline for measuring this, so if a student doesn't return to school and you don't drop them from the rolls for 10 days, you know, some of those logistical kinds of things, the way they're written right now, they're pretty they're pretty stringent on those types of things. I made a little list there of other things that you might be interested in. So the old school performance profile number, like what number did the high school get, 96.4 and whatnot, that number is still going to be created. It's still part of a federal guideline. It's still going to be part of the teacher evaluation system, but it will not be available to the public or posted on the PDE website. So that will be provided to us so that we can use it in calculating teachers' proficiency level when we do their evaluations at the end of the year. But the goal is for this Future Ready Index to replace that. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the N, as we call it, the N is now 20. In the past, in order to have a subgroup, the N was 11, so we had to have a much smaller group of students in order for it to be kind of called out on our school performance profile. So in our situation, with an N of 20, let's say in second grade, you may well not have 20 ELL students or 20 students from a certain ethnic group or 20 special ed students. So that could very well make a difference in how things are recorded. So at the bottom, I noted a little bit of information about the dashboard. They're going to be clustering this information into what they call 3 buckets. And I am sad to say that we've watched a few PowerPoints and webinars, and it is impossible to get copies of them. I actually took pictures of a screen with my telephone. It's very, very difficult. I did put a couple pictures there on the back for you to give you an idea of what the buckets look like, but they're sad at best. But I think the what? Yeah. Yeah, did they steal that from us? That's a good idea. So when you log on to the site, and like I said, it's going to go live in late fall, as it's called, with the school performance profile being produced about 2 weeks after that. What the public is going to see is these various buckets and a different type of color coding. So they're going to be using blue if you meet or exceed the state goal. They're going to be using green if you meet your improvement target, and they're going to be using red if the news is not good. There is just reams and reams of information available. They did a demonstration just this past Wednesday. Users are going to be able to pull down all kinds of menus, and they're going to be able to compare ELL special ed students that are in 3rd grade at, such and such a school to ELL students, in another district. And but it is, at first glance, I find it a little cumbersome, and I don't know how many lay folks are going to log on and start, playing with the drop-down menus and those types of things. My assumption is that people will go on and kind of glance at the colors and say, oh, look, Radnor's blue and green, and so-and-so's red and blue, or whatever it is, and that might draw their attention. So what you'll see when you go on is actually the bottom picture is where you start to see the buckets, and then the top picture where you see the little, looks like stickers, little colored stickers, that's when you drill down and look at some of the specific data. So it is a lot more data than what we had with the school performance profile, but what PDE has been telling us for the last year is they want people to be more critical thinkers when they look at the data than just saying, oh, Radnor's a 96 and someone else is a 95, Radnor must be better. So, the idea is to actually look at the different information and really digest what it means to those different types of student groups. So I know it's not a lot of information as far as the visual piece. I gave you a link there where you can actually go on and look at all the formulas that are going to create each of the subsets if you want to take a look at that. But you can't really, the website is dark, it's not there. You're not able to look at that yet. And like I said, they've really posted very little, and even some of the IU presentations that Kevin and I went to, we asked for copies of the PowerPoints, and everything's been kept pretty close to the vest.
Maureen, can I ask a clarifying question about this, the N number? Because you were talking about, like, people will be able to go on, perfect example, and compare the 3rd grade ELLs at Radnor Elementary to the 3rd grade ELLs at maybe Marion Elementary. But if we don't have 20 of them,
then there will be no data.
There will be no data, but it doesn't mean we don't have ELLs in 3rd grade. Will it say something like that?
It'll say either didn't meet the N group, or I'm trying to remember what it's.
Usually, in the past, they would have an asterisk, which would say stop. In the past, they would have an asterisk, which would say N group does not meet 20.
Okay, so did they give an explanation for changing the N group number?
Most of it is about identifying information.
They want to try and keep
11
it
is
more individual.
11 is pretty small.
Too easy to
Yeah.
identify.
Especially
Okay.
if it's, you know,
But the
certain
problem
groups.
is that in a lot of situations, it may mean that you actually, these comparisons they're trying to make, you won't be able to make. at
Correct.
Radnor. Okay.
Correct.
But we do keep that.
The data? Yes,
We still have it.
sure.
Just out of curiosity.
What data? Now you're.
Well, we don't have the end, we don't have the 20, but if we have 17, we still keep that on.
We have the
everybody.
level down
And-
to the
and as
student level.
soon- And as soon as it bumps up above 20, we have to report it. Correct? Yeah. I guess my question is, how does this affect your workload, the workload of you and your staff? I mean,
It's going to depend what people do with the data. So, you know, when the SPP score comes out, what's the first thing that everyone does? You know, the newspaper grabs all the scores and puts everybody in chronological order, and we're all on the website, you know, looking to see who's number one and number two. The idea with this is for us to really use the data to help us with instruction and programming. So the focus is on, you know, let's look who is achieving. Let's look, and the examples they gave last week in the most recent webinar was, you know, if I'm a school district and my fourth graders are struggling with a certain strand or whatever on one of the assessments, I can go and look at other districts that are doing well, and I can use that, you know, as an opportunity to learn from some of my neighboring districts and some of my colleagues. But if somebody's going to go in and count up all the little dots and they're going to say a blue is worth 4 and a green is worth 2 and a red is worth 0, and now we've got more numbers and more rankings, then, you know, I think it just kind of drives it in the wrong direction in my mind.
well, I guess, do you have to put in additional data, I guess, to get, in other words, for the, in the past, right, and now we're changing to another system that they're going to put in place, right? The Future Ready PA Index, okay? Do you need to provide them with more data?
We do need to provide them with more data. Yes.
That was my question.
And that's what Kevin's going to talk about,
Oh,
because
you're going to, and that's going to,
Yes.
that, again, is something that is being mandated
Yes.
to us, and it's going to cost more money
yes.
for us to do that. That's kind of what I was looking at, and it's going to cost more hours of work for certain people, curriculum. but-
Or additional staffing? I mean,
Right.
Why don't we jump into the piece
Yeah,
with the
thank you.
339 plan, because I think that is that's the biggest impact, really, of the plan as far as locally.
So I will do the driving. So just to give a background, I'm not going to go through every slide because of the time because of the time left, but college and career readiness has been around for many decades. This video is a very good video. I don't think we're going to have time to show it. It's about 8 minutes. It really defines the reason why college and career readiness has risen to the level of attention with the state and in the nation. The board members will be receiving a copy of this book, Redefining the Goal, by Dr. Fleming. All of our administrators have received the book, and our guidance counselors have received the book. So I'm just going to go over a little bit of some of the, well, I'm going to focus on career readiness benchmark, but just go over a little bit of the work that took place over the last, well, since spring 2007, so a little over 15 months. Our guidance counselors, or our school counselors, so we're starting to call them school counselors. We do need some things updated, but our school counselors have been going through an intensive amount of professional development, meeting with Michael Thompson, who is the consultant with PDE in regards to college and career readiness. And so we had a contract through the Chester County Intermediate Unit that the board approved, where he would come in and work directly with the counselors regarding a topic which, although not directly instructed through our guidance program, obviously has a large piece to do with our guidance program. So they were looking at, it's called the College Education, it's CEW standards. career education and work standards. And so when you look at those standards, many of those standards are things which are happening in our schools already, right? You know, so as people have mentioned, you know, who is going to do the work. A lot of the work is being incorporated into our curriculum already, but over time, through the curriculum cycle, that's really where it needs to be addressed the most solidly, because right now we are pushing in activities to meet the requirements of the Future Ready Index. And so in elementary schools, so they start in 3rd grade now in regards to college and career readiness. The focus is on awareness, learning about themselves, what their interests are. I've learned along with the counselors. So, you know, for example, you know, going off Mr. Rabarchek's presentation, getting along with others, that's a work skill. Getting along in groups, that's a work skill. You know, so many of the things that are happening in our schools do count. Many of those things haven't been, or have not in the past been, data hasn't been collected, or what they're calling pieces of evidence have not been collected. In the middle school, their focus is on exploration. So they're using a program that we have for a long time, Naviance. Many of the trainings that we've worked with over the past year or so have focused on how better to use that. Those who have had graduates know that primarily the Naviance program is used to identify what college you want to go to look at your transcripts, to take an inventory now and then to get an idea of, you know, do you want to be an astronaut or do you want to go into finance? And so that's really focused on exploration. So an example that the elementary or that the middle school is doing, they're having career cafes. So they're inviting in community members into lunch, and during the year, each student has to attend 2 career cafes. And the evidence then is collected through our Naviance program. And that evidence accumulates over time.
No, I'm just walking out.
And then in the high school, the focus is on planning and developing an academic and career plan. So by the end of 11th grade, the requirement is that students will have a career plan outlining not just, you know, do they want to go to college, but after college. In the state of California, they call it a 10-year plan. So where do you want to be when you're 28, so to speak? In Pennsylvania, we're not looking at that degree of forecasting, but we're looking at if I really enjoy engineering, do I have to be an engineer? Or can I do another activity that is going to provide me a very good income in the engineering field? And so those are like really the focus areas. And the Fleming book and the video really outlines, you know, how the economy has changed. And many of us who attend to the news recognize that the jobs that are available now are jobs that we're unable to fill. Pennsylvania last year graduated more students with bachelor's degrees than there are jobs for bachelor's degrees. You know, so the idea of this, the guidance plan with the college and career focus, 339 specifically, is to prepare students for the future. So it's very exciting, but there is a lot of work involved with it. So, for example, by the end of 5th grade, there need to be 6 pieces of evidence. We're looking at evidence collected in grades 3, 4, and 5, so 2 pieces of evidence per year. In the elementary schools, that evidence is being collected hard copy, and it's being uploaded into our Naviance system. So if I was a 3rd grader, I now have a Naviance account. As a 3rd grader, I'm not going into Naviance because they have not, you know, they're primarily focused on 6 to 12, although, you know, because of Pennsylvania, they're, Pennsylvania, I think in the notes, is one of, I think, 9 states in the country that are really focusing on college and career readiness. And so because of that, you're getting, you know, businesses who are now targeting that. So so like the walk to Wayne, right? That's something we already do. In the past, there really was no culminating activity. Now there's a culminating activity. The students write about the businesses that they saw. They have certain questions they're supposed to ask the owners or the staff that work at those businesses. Again, it's providing them with the idea of awareness, what jobs are available. Then in 8th grade, they had to demonstrate another 6. So if you think of the ESSA plan that PDE had approved, it was it was a long window. So this, I believe is it a 12-year window that it was approved for?
I think so.
So regardless, this year's 3rd grade will be the first group that will meet all the requirements regarding the evidence. So our 3rd graders, we focused on getting 2 pieces of evidence. In 4th grade, they're going to do 2. 5th grade do 2. They'll have 6. Those pieces of evidence are all. I've learned a lot of things because in my special ed role, I don't do a lot of curriculum writing. But so our counselors have been working with the curriculum department, with the curriculum staff and the department chairs in the buildings to identify where these things logically can land, and how do we measure that. And so so there's not duplications of efforts, right? So in the past, the middle school may have had a student do a career inventory, but the research suggests that doing a career inventory in middle school might be little bit early. That's where you want to do like more of an interest inventory. So now career inventories are now moved to the high school in 9th grade. So the various tweaks of the program have occurred, and then in high school in grades 9, 10, and 11, there again are additional 6 pieces of evidence. So this year's 3rd grader will have 18 pieces of evidence by the time they graduate. All that evidence is collected. As I mentioned, right now in the elementary schools, that's more hands-on, so that is work. And it's work that we did get behind in, but we are going to scan everything. And I'm going to be working with Mr. Robarczyk if he didn't run out. And he ran out of the room already, in regards to how we're going to make sure that everything gets connected to each individual student and each individual student's ID. But again, that information will roll up with the student. The focus, I'm not going to read it to you, but here we have what the elementary schools are looking at in regards to college and career readiness, some of the highlights that they're doing. Similarly with middle school, focusing on exploration, and then ultimately the high school, focusing on an academic and career plan. So there's a lot to it. There's actually a document, a 339 plan document, which goes through the entire creation and the beginning of training that began in the spring of 2017 and culminated in June 2018. And part of the plan is an advisory group, which is an interesting concept, and Mr. Madden attended as a board member to the advisory group. The advisory groups, the concept behind that is, how do schools know what the business world needs? We think we know because we read books, and we have curriculum that are aligned to standards. But really, what are the big topics? And it was interesting because we had members of the Wayne Business Association and other various business leaders. Students are required to be on it. Students in grades 3, elementary students, their parents. It was really a nice program. And what was interesting is that all these sort of soft skills that we talk about, that's where kids are lacking when they graduate college. They come out very prepared, very well prepared in their knowledge and their content area. But working with others, not staring at their phones and texting all day, those are things that kids grew up with, and so the idea is that it's an opportunity for the program to stay current. And the advisory group is required to meet twice a year. I mean, there's all sorts of requirements that are part of it. That's where we identify like our ratios of counselors to students.
Kev, could I jump in for a minute too? And just looking at the time and also the enormity of this topic, and this is something we want to continue, and I think we discussed this idea earlier. Maybe I could suggest, and Maureen, tell me your thoughts, maybe we could plan an information session, to continue some of this discussion, to looking at the time, open it up to the full board, to have an information session, and then, could have a little more opportunity to watch that video and some other opportunities to look at this, if that makes sense. We could plan that at a future date. Would that make sense? Just looking at the time?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think this is the kind of thing that it's very discretionary how far in the weeds we need to go with regard to implementing this. I mean, I really believe that. I've been doing some work on the other end of this with regard to my job, and I know that in the law I read that they don't want schools necessarily running out and doing new things to meet this. They really wrote this in the spirit of, you may already and probably are already doing this, and we just want you to document that you're doing that. So I just felt that in the back of my head too, that I'm not going to tell you how to do your job, but I do know that they don't mean for this to be an arduous, we need to totally revamp what we're doing.
That's a great point. I mean, that's where like things like our walk to Wayne, I mean, there are things that we do that are already preparing our students, and it's been a good opportunity for us as a district to look at those items, to take stock in what are those things we're doing, how purposeful are we being. There was questions at the very beginning about staffing and reporting. There's two different issues with there is PIMS and there's updating of information, which has been growing over the years. And that has been, a lot of that has been put on the shoulders of our technology department under Dr. McCook, and that requirements, others help support generating those numbers. This is another example where there is more data being uploaded to PIMS. There is a separate piece where we talk about just what are the teachers and the counselors have to do to account for this and all of that. So there's kind of two issues there as we're discussing those pieces. But yes, I think the state and we are looking at this from what are the things that we do already. What are those soft skills we already touch upon, and how do we touch upon them, which has been a positive thing to look at.
And I can't help but say, everything you need to learn, you learned in kindergarten. Just on this.
Let me just jump in. I attended a Rose Tree Media school board meeting, and what they did, they had their third grade students, and they came in dressed as occupations that they were interested in, and they just introduced themselves, and I'd like to be whatever. And again, that was very nice, and it gave the board an opportunity to see students, and the students came in dressed as whatever they were. I thought it was very good. So that's like a little bit out of the box thinking, but it was nice.
I think something that would be useful at some point, and I mean really brief, just high level, I think it would be good for the board to understand the PIMS, the PVAS, all these, I still don't know that anybody really understands how PVAS is calculated. Probably Kelly does, maybe Maureen, but just maybe, how those things might also fit into this, because there was such focus on that a couple of years ago. Are you going to show growth? And now it seems like they're never satisfied. Now we have this whole new piece whole new hoop that we have to jump through, it seems. But you're saying those things haven't really gone away. It's just adding more stuff we have to do.
Maybe you could use our new YouTube and do tutorials on YouTube about the PVAS and about this and about that, so that you don't have to come and present it to us.
We could have a quiz at the end.
To prove that you saw it. Any additional questions regarding the 339 project?
Let me just jump in, because I did attend that one conference that we had, and I congratulate Kevin for putting that all together, and our counselors that were there, and the parents, and we did divide into smaller groups, and I had one of the kids that he had went from elementary school to the middle school, and he was discussing the differences with us in our small group. And it was very valuable to hear from the actual students, and we had somebody from Penn State who was there. We had a lot of good speakers, and I congratulate you on putting that all together. It was very well done, so thank you.
So where can we hear more about that?
We can do an information session.
Yeah.
Let's regroup, we'll talk about possibly
Yeah,
an information session or a future
That might be useful,
meeting.
because
Sure.
that was kind of a kickoff, it sounds like.
Yeah, and then we'll
I'm
send
not
an
sure I know
announcement out with
much
the
about
date
what happened.
and,
Okay.
and give an opportunity for folks that are interested in going deeper to come and hear more.
So I got to commend you once again. You guys, I believe, are way ahead of the curve on this. I know you said we're behind, but I don't think we're behind other school districts. So.
Maybe
We
we'll
are
get some
moving
future, maybe we'll get
quickly.
some maybe we have some future support from the Delaware County IU
Yeah.
Special Ed Department,
Yeah, there
you
might
know,
be-
with this,
Might
I
be a
think.
strong
I'm thinking, yes, I'm
support
thinking
there
that-
for this. All right.
Thank
Anybody?
you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else have any closing comments on? Okay, so if we're okay, we'll move on to, next item on our agenda is new business. Is there any new business?
I have a question, and I apologize, because this is something I would typically email you about, so if you don't have the answer, please just say so,
I'll
that's
make
fine.
one up.
I feel like last year it was the curriculum meeting, and maybe it was a different committee, that we looked at, there were charts of all the different grades and whether we were meeting our classroom size, like our internal
class
caps.
size. Right.
Class size.
So last year we did that twice.
Yes.
But this year we're going to be doing it just one time. So the date, I think it's usually an October count
Okay.
that we report to PDE. So we're going to try to have it on that same cycle. Because what we did last time was we reported it really early, and then remember we had to come back again like 2 months later and say, so some people left and we didn't know, and so this time we're just going to do the accurate count instead of the
So since
predictor.
I keep getting copied on emails from the RES fourth grade parents who are very concerned about the size of their grade, do we have a sense of how many sections there are there? And if you don't, can you just email me later?
Yeah.
I've been like
Tony
on
can email
many,
you.
many emails this summer about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
We watch
That'd
that every week. So.
I'm sure you do. That's sounds like the emails I'm getting. So I
It probably doesn't hurt to just reiterate, the expectation is that we're not going to violate our class size guidelines, so.
Right, and it's 25, and I think the last email I got, someone said they checked with the district and we were over 100, so we should be fine to get an extra section, and I said, you don't know that, like,
You should.
well,
Yeah.
but I just wanted
We
to
check it every
hear
week, so we can give you an
Okay.
update on that.
Okay,
Thank you.
All right. That brings us to public comment. Is there any public comment at this time?
Roberta Winters, I want to thank Mr. Grabarchak for addressing some of my comments as he presented his program today, and I would also reinforce what I believe Mr. Madden said about how important to have the counselor feedback and also the feedback from the special teachers. I know, for example, the art teachers are very helpful with things like small motor skills that I think are desperately needed. I know when I was teaching many years ago, we had twice as much music at the kindergarten level because it was so important for kids to develop listening skills and the sound and repetition and so forth. So I think that might be paying some dividends as well, because sometimes it's things like music that enhance literacy as well as more time in the classroom with a textbook or other activities that might be purposeful play. And also I would like to appreciate some feedback perhaps from the parents. While I know they appreciate having time without having daycare issues with kids in full-day kindergarten, I think sometimes they can compare how it's worked with them with students, as you said, have had a half-day program versus a full-day program. I think it would be helpful, as Mr. Batchelor noted, that perhaps the information session that the school board has asked for about this new program be also open to the parents, and it might be something the PTAs need to hear about. I would also like to remind the people, particularly at the high school, since I'm on the Hall of Fame committee, that's a really wonderful opportunity for career awareness when we bring back our alumni. And I know Mr. Burnaby at one point in time, and I don't know if Mr. Bechtel was here or not, but there was a plan for a career center at the high school that was going to be funded and manned by high school alumni. Do you remember that, Chuck? I do. So I think that might be something we might want to rediscover. And also, in looking at the calendar committee that Ms. McGuigan mentioned, there were calendar committees in the past. It's a no-win situation, but good luck. And we always did work with the Teachers Association. There were Teachers Association representatives. I'm sure Andrew remembers those meetings. And good luck. Thank you.
We used to vote them down, remember? Seriously, it was ugly.
Hi, Judy Sherry. There was a recent article in the Inquirer about Garnet Valley's 5-year goal to offer every single course at Garnet Valley High School in 3 formats: traditional face-to-face, online, or a combination of the 2. And I just wondered if anyone here will monitor this goal, and just to kind of see how it evolves, whether it's a successful one, whether it's something we should consider or not consider. Number 2, do any teachers have concerns about the Amplify Science curriculum? I asked that before, and that wasn't answered. Number 3, I can't wait to see the answers to all of Roberta's questions that she asked. I know some of them were answered, but there are quite a few that are still out there. And regarding purposeful playtime, I guess I've never really heard that phrase before, but I really wonder how that is, I'll use the word monitor again, or evaluated or timed. And is purposeful play just in kindergarten? Do we have it in 1st grade? Do we have it in 2nd grade? Does it expand? Does it get more? Do we have more time? Do we have less time? I'd like some more information about that. And just regarding Mandarin, when we did an initial survey, it was pretty popular. It was a we got a positive result about people's interest in Mandarin, yet hasn't run, and we keep offering it the same way. It's, to me, when we say we're offering world languages, we're offering Western European languages: French, Spanish, German, and I don't know what Latin, where that fits in. But in 2018, it seems to me that it's a pretty narrow offering when you consider what the world is like today. So I'm wondering, again, is there any consideration to trying to present it in a different format in the future so that it runs? Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, I just want to give a shout out to thank the high school. Whoever sent this little gem along in our packets, how much I enjoyed this. I suspect this is the work of Mr. Payne. I'm not sure who all gets credit for that,
I
but.
didn't get that.
Oh, okay. And I want to thank the students too. What an amazing, so I want to recommend this to everybody. Oh, I guess I'm special. Well, you got to share. Our next meeting, I believe, will be September 11th, but double check that. And I think we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.